Okay, welcome to the podcast. This is A1 Nick with A1 Bail Bonds. I have a special guest who's going to explain bail reform the last few years in the state of California. So, thank you for joining us, Mr. Eric Granof. How's it going?
Good. Thanks for having me.
So it's really confusing, and I feel like nobody's really done a complete and thorough review of what happened in California over the last few years. So I'd like to start with 2018 with the passing of Senate Bill 10. Could you please let my viewers know exactly what Senate Bill 10 was and how it affected the bail bond industry?
Yeah, so it actually goes a little bit further back than 2018. I believe it's actually 2017 when you had Senate Bill 10 along with its companion bill, AB 42, which was basically, it's the same bill, and either one is in the Assembly, one's in the Senate. When they pass, they cross like that and go to the other houses. And the idea is if one of them dies, the other one's still alive. So there's actually two bills back in 2017. And a lot of people kind of forget that. But it was Assembly Bill 42 that was actually beaten in the Assembly by a lot of the moderate Democrats voted that down. And what both of these bills basically did was eliminated the commercial bonding business and replaced it with a system of pretrial release and incorporating, things like ankle monitors, drug testing, those types of things as conditions of release along with that. And I don't think it incorporated the use of risk assessments at that point. It was really more of just a pretrial services type of bill, but it would have done away with bail. And so what happened at that point was after AB 42 died in the Assembly, Senate Bill 10 just kind of stayed there at the end of 2017, and they didn't really take it out of committee. It just kind of, in California, I believe bills can go on for a couple of years. And so what ended up happening in 2018 is that we sat and we watched, and Senate Bill 10 just kind of sat there. Nothing was going on. Our lobbyists were letting us know nothing was really going on. It just kind of sat there. And it was interesting at the very end of the session, all of a sudden the bill comes out, and they call it a mushroom bill, right? It happens in the dark of the night, and the next day there's suddenly like a mushroom there. And so that's what SB 10 kind of happened. And the interesting thing was what happened behind closed doors was a deal with the unions. So Senator Hertzberg went to the SEIU, and, to simplify it a lot, it was basically, listen, could you guys use 15,000 jobs? I can give you 15,000 jobs if you can get me a yes vote on SB 10. And the SEIU, which, probation and parole is part of that larger union group, I believe, that they said, sure. And next thing you had it was the bill came out, boom, it passed like that before anyone realized what was going on. And you now had eliminated commercial bail in the state of California and replaced it with basically a public sector union solution. And as part of that solution was the use of the incorporation, the widespread use of these risk assessments. And what happened was right when the bill came out and they announced that the risk assessments were going to be part of it, that's when all of the social justice groups, NAACP, and a lot of these other groups really said, well, hold on, we want bail reform, but we don't want these risk assessments, because all these studies that are coming out right now are telling us that these risk assessments are racially biased. In fact, it's not just racially biased, they're gender biased now, we're finding out in recent studies. So there's a lot of issues with these risk assessments, and it really comes down to all the studies that are being done that says it's the information that you're putting in. If that information has any sort of racial bias in it, then the output you're going to get is going to have racial bias in it. So there really is no real clean way to do this. And I think that's what turned all the social groups off of SB 10 and kind of turned them into, well, we don't want this bill to pass. It did. And then that led us to kind of the next efforts with, what eventually became Proposition 25.
Yeah, you actually were the one who introduced me to the University of Michigan study, as well as the ProPublica article, where, in case people don't know, University of Michigan, one of the best research institutions that we have in the country, as well as ProPublica, which is like a nonprofit agency charged with delivering like unbiased, like Pulitzer Prize winning research journalism. And once I read the thoroughness of that article, as well as the study from the University of Michigan, it was very obvious to see your point, where I couldn't believe that to replace bail, the recommendation was to use risk assessments and supervision. Both were fraught with problems from the get-go and actually shown to treat white people and Black people, high risk and low risk, completely wrong. It was not even better. It was as random as a coin flip. And you specifically told me that. And I didn't believe it until I actually read the article. So I do want people to take, I'll put some links in the description, ProPublica and the University of Michigan study. That is pretty like conclusive, showing that risk assessments are biased because of the information that goes in actually gives you an output of racially biased information. All right. My mistake. I erroneously talked about the University of Michigan study, which pertains only to the sentencing of white people versus Black people. Totally got that one mixed up. It's just specific to sentencing. It does not have anything to do with the algorithms, which then determine risk factors when somebody is out and their likelihood of returning to court. So once again, my apologies. I went ahead and reviewed everything. I saw that the University of Michigan study was specific to sentencing on the federal level between white and Black people, as opposed to the point that I was trying to make about risk assessments and algorithms giving faulty information and miscomparing or erroneously comparing white people and Black people based on risk factors and likelihood to return to court. My apologies.
Groundswell that was behind risk assessments. I mean, you're talking like the Pretrial Justice Institute. A lot of these organizations that for years have really been trying to replace our industry, they were so behind this risk assessment stuff. It was, I mean, I have actually done presentations showing quote after quote after quote after video clip after video clip after video clip of people in these organizations saying, listen, the answers is really simple. You just use these risk assessments and then you're going to have the answer that you need. It's a simple list of questions. You answer these questions and boom, you can easily see who's going to be a risk to the public, who's going to show up for court. And for years, our industry sat back and said, what? You mean you're going to rely on what a computer tells you on whether someone is risky or not? I mean, when you do what we do and you work in this industry, you realize that when people do things, it's not always necessarily something that's planned. You know, it's like someone's going to get arrested because they went to a bar. They don't go to the bar to get into a fight. It happened. And so to sit there and say that a computer algorithm is going to identify the next time I'm going to get in trouble, or the next time I decide I don't want to go show up for an appointment or my day at court. I mean, it's kind of far reaching if you think about it just at the highest levels. But then when you start getting into the actual grinding of the data and what these algorithms do, which is read for those trends in data. But if the data that's going in, it has these issues, your output's going to have those issues. So I'm glad everyone's finally waking up to it, but it's almost like I could have done without the last, 5 to 10 years of getting beaten up over this stuff when we've been telling everybody these things don't work.
I'm sorry, Senate Bill 10 did pass. Now, can you walk me through the referendum effort and what exactly Proposition 25 was?
Yes. I think before I get, so California is a state in where we have the ability to do a referendum. And actually, before I got on here, I went back. I think in the history of the state, since 1912, we have records, I think 29 times the voters have pulled back something, a bill. A referendum has been successful and the voters said no to it. Which is in the history of California, that's not a lot of time. It's a very rare occurrence for this to happen. It's not an easy thing to do. And so when Senate Bill 10 passed, we were kind of shocked that it had happened so quickly, but I mean, it was great to see the industry really pull together that quickly people that I think were normally competitors really working together and said, we just look, sureties and agents and everyone said, we've got to beat this. There's different strategies we could take here. California's got referendums. Let's kind of try to do a referendum. And so within, I think, 2 or 3 days, we had already got everyone on board and had a couple $1 million committed to the fight to get signatures, because the first part of the referendum is getting enough signatures. And that number of signatures is based on, it's a certain percentage of how many people voted in the gubernatorial election, the most recent gubernatorial election, which for us at the time was Jerry Brown, which thank goodness, because that was several years ago and it was not a very well attended election for us. And so the number that we had to get based on that number was about 468,000 signatures we had to gather. And so I think we ended up with and you have about 180 days to do it, I think it is, or 160 days, 150 days. And we ended up with about 500 and something thousand. So well over the number that we needed. And, got enough signatures to get it approved by the Secretary of State and all that. And we're going to be on the ballot in 2020. And this is back in 2018. So the second that we were able to get enough signatures, and it was declared that we did by, actually even more, I think the second we filed that we were going to do a referendum, what that does is it actually puts a stay on the SB 10, which means that it doesn't go into effect, because it was literally supposed to go into effect the following November, I believe, October of the next year. So by getting the signatures ready to go and filing for that referendum, we stopped that process. And so we had enough signatures that got approved, and then we were on the ballot in 2020. So all that time between when we filed that to the actual election, SB 10 was put on hold. The signatures, we got, agents all over the state. We got a ton of assistance from victim advocacy groups. There's a lot of people that didn't like this bill. And so the signature gathering really wasn't something that it was just bail agents out doing. I mean, it was a lot of people didn't like the bill. It was bad legislation. You can play the recordings of the people that voted for it that said, this isn't good legislation, but it's something we need to do, and I'm going to do it. So that became kind of like how we got to the point where then we had to start, once we're going to be on the ballot, then we have to start developing messaging. Then you got to start developing a campaign strategy that, has a very interesting timing component too, right? Because, the way television advertising works, especially in this last election, things were not cheap in terms of television advertising. And so you had to start getting all your ducks in a row and all your budgeting around to time it so that you're actually hitting your commercials at the right time during the voting. But then this year with COVID, it kind of got all crazy too. So
can you explain what Proposition 25 was?
Yeah, so proposition is it's the referendum. So basically, the way referendums work in California is basically they've passed a law, and then they're putting the law in front of the voters to say, do you want this law or do you not want this law? And so it's a no vote. Okay. But
what was Prop 25? I don't really understand. Is it like a single sentence on a ballot? Is it like
no? They wrote a paragraph that explains it, and so we don't write it. The other side kind of gets to write it. Well, so I think it's the Secretary of State's office, but they write it, and then we basically just can make comments, and then they're either going to listen or not. But it's Proposition 25, and before it you had Proposition 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20. They all have a title, and then they all have a short paragraph description of what it is. And then you could vote no or you vote yes. And so all that stuff's kind of out of our control. I think we got lucky is that they probably could have been a lot worse than how they described it. But the description was definitely in their favor of replacing an unfair money bail system with a system that relies not on the amount of money you have, but on the amount of risk you pose, which isn't really the best description in terms of what they were offering. But I think that I think, it could have been worse, but I think that, the description is something we just had to work with. But I think the most important thing that we did as part of this fight was the coalition building, because the reality is, like I said, it's like, this isn't just a bail issue. I mean, this isn't just an industry issue. Yeah, everyone talks about how you'd put the bail industry out, like there'd be no more jobs in California for bail agents. They basically have been replaced with people that work for the probation and parole departments. But it was more than that. I mean, there was huge impacts to public safety, huge impacts to the accountability of people, even whether they're going to show up or not, huge impacts to kind of the infrastructure of who's going to organize and set up. I mean, you think about it, you're taking 15,000 bail agents and overnight they're gone. Well, who's going to handle the work that all those bail agents did? You have to replace that with all these people. You got to teach them. You have to create a system to be able to organize it. It's a crazy idea to think that was going to happen as quick as it was, and the amount of money it was going to cost. I mean, you got to remember, for people that don't know what we do for a living, it doesn't cost the government anything. I mean, we are a service that's paid for by the people that are using that service. It's not like the government gives us money whether people get out or not. And so they waste no money by utilizing us. So by actually going to the system, they're spending more money than they would have if they just let us to do what we do. And so I think that was an issue that people didn't like. And while all this was going on, which I think was probably pretty helpful, is that other states had tried bail reform. I mean, New York passed it in their budget at the beginning of 2019, and it passed and then it went into effect at the beginning of 2020. And within 4 months, they turned it around. It was a complete and utter catastrophe. And for the first time, a major media market responded to failed bail reform. And what we saw was article after article, mention after mention on every single news program every night about the increased crime, about the failures of bail reform, about these people that they were just letting out of jail with no accountability. It was unbelievable to see what happened. And I think everyone here in California was sitting back saying, well, why would we do that? We get to watch this movie from afar. And so I think that helped fuel a lot of the push in our direction on Prop 25 when all this other stuff was going on out around the country. I mean, even all the chaos that happened over the summer with the protests and all these things. I just think a lot of people were kind of sick and tired of what was going on. And I think that fueled some of the support for us at that time. But it was really a coalition. Law enforcement stepped up. Victim advocates stepped up. You had retail associations that were stepping up because the increase in crime and people, shoplifting from them, they're losing, tons and tons and tons of merchandise. And then, when you started having people look into the risk assessments and SB 10s, how they were incorporated into SB 10, you begin to have the NAACP begin to kind of come out against it. I think BLM at one point came out publicly, and they had some campaigns against it. So there was a lot of these social justice groups started realizing this is a good law. So when you hear Senator Hertzberg, say that, the bail industry confused people into voting no, or people didn't understand what they were voting no against. And it's just not true. There's enough people understood how bad this bill was that they had to vote no. And the results of the outcome of the election, tells you that. I mean, I think there's 58 counties in California, and I think we won all but 9 counties or 8 counties. And I think, the final total was 56% to 44%. I mean, 12 points is a huge margin of victory. And to do something that's only been done a handful of times in the history of your state, I mean, people don't understand the magnitude of that decision, by the voters. Mm-hmm. Once again, this isn't a bail industry paying billions of dollars to people and confuse. This was the bail industry who was outspent probably 3 to 1. Okay, and it was just people understood this was bad legislation, and we just helped them get the word out. And made them aware of it. And, not only has a referendum's been successful, I think only 29 times, but I think the statistic I just recently saw is 20 or 2/3 of every referendum effort ever done, the person that spends the most money wins. And I might have just referenced, I think 2/3 of any campaign run, 2/3 of the time, the person whoever spends the most money wins. So we spent less money and did something that's rarely been done in the state of California. I think that's a testament to not only, I think, the organization and I think the efforts of our industry, but even bigger, that this was just bad legislation, and it gives you good feelings to know that the public is smart enough to see it and step up and vote it down.
Yeah, I remember from the bail bonds convention, the number 2.2 million votes in excess of what was needed in order that were saying no to Proposition 25. So then the Senate bill would never go into actual action. So that's a pretty healthy margin, 2.2 million people, and especially in the state of California. It's a big state, but 2.2 million people is still a pretty healthy margin. And moving forward, there is sort of like, how do I say? There's like a poverty of language when it comes to bail and what we do. People have called a bail bond premium a ransom. For whatever reason, I've read articles where Senator Hertzberg calls our insurance-based industry usury. And I just happened to come across a quote by Mark Twain, where Twain says, the difference between using the correct word and the almost correct word is the difference between saying a lightning bug versus a lightning bolt. So I guess back then, a lightning bug was a firefly. And of course, we all know how serious and different that is from a lightning bolt. But could you describe the difference and the insurance-based routes with what we do as commercial surety as compared to what, I guess, usury or loan sharking is?
Yeah. So the quote I come up with is probably a little more simple than yours. I would just say, sticks and stones can break my bones, but words can never hurt me, I guess. But it's all part of the narrative, right? Because it's not just, when they use terms like that to describe what we do. They use terms like that to describe what we do because they're trying to create an emotion out of people, right? You don't say that people are locked up in jail because they're bad. You say that people who are innocent until proven guilty are locked in a steel cage and only because they can't afford it. It's like, well, you don't talk about the fact that they're actually accused of a crime, or you don't talk about they have a criminal record because it doesn't flow with your narrative. And so using the terms that they use to describe us, it's just part of their narrative. And, we all see through it. But I mean, the reality is, bail, we're an insurance product. I mean, the same type of surety bond that someone who has a family member locked up, that they're going to go ahead and post that surety bond with the court, and with the guarantee that that person's going to show up for court, or that family member is going to pay the court the amount of the bond, is no different than the same amount or the same surety bond. It's just a different type of surety bond that they say that they added a wing on to the Capitol in Sacramento and built Senator Hertzberg a new office. The same bond that contractor would have to get, the surety bond, guaranteeing that the work that he was going to do to build Senator Hertzberg a new office, and he was going to financially stand behind that guarantee, that's the same kind of bond that we give for people that go out of jail. Okay. And what that bond does is it guarantees that someone's watching. It guarantees that there's going to be some level of accountability. And it makes sure that the person who gets out of jail has their chance at freedom, and the person who had the crime committed them gets their chance at justice by that person showing up for court. So it really is, in my opinion, it's the fulcrum that balances the scale of liberty for the individual and justice for the victim. And it really is money's used, but it's done in a way that balances that it's not a penalty, but it's not an award, and it can't be excessive, but it has to be the right amount. It has to be an appropriate amount. But so when we get into, talking about terms like premium and it just like any other insurance policy, I mean, you pay a premium on it. With bail, $1,000 bond, you're going to pay, 10% based on the filed rate of that insurance company in the state of California. And if you work with that, and if you meet a set of criteria, like maybe you're a veteran, or maybe you have some other criteria that allows you to get a discount, that bail agent can offer you a discount, because some of the rates that are filed with the state of California are tiered, so that you can say that if this person has a lawyer, they're going to get a lower rate. This person is a veteran, they get a lower rate. So you're allowed to do that, but that's all within your insurance filings, because we're actually regulated by the Department of Insurance, which a lot of people don't really know, because the way they talk about us, it sounds like we're not regulated by anybody and that we're just running around like cowboys doing whatever we want. And that's absolutely not true. We're actually very heavily regulated by the Department of Insurance, much like every other surety company out there and every other insurance company out there. So what'll happen is you'll pay your premium, and that premium upon the execution of that bond is fully earned, just like every other insurance policy. So when you don't get in a car accident that year, but you've paid all your car insurance, you don't get your car insurance money back that you paid, because that premium is fully earned at the time of the execution of that contract. So our business is no different. To say that we're like loan sharks, that's ridiculous. I mean, we don't loan people money, right? That we'll put them on payment plans, which is the amount of money they have, and that's a tool used just like everybody else. Best Buy sells TVs with payment plans, right? Just like bail, we sell a product, we sell it with payment plans, because that's what the marketplace evolved into. Previously, 15 years ago, 10 years ago, not a lot of payment plans. People paid full. Now, people have got more credit cards. People go on payment plans. That's just part of the business. Interest, my understanding in the state of California is you can't charge interest on bail premium. Okay, so when they say that we're like loan sharks, how are we like loan sharks when all we're doing is they're paying us for the product that they had? We don't charge them excessive forces and all these fees and all that. It's just not what we do. We can't. It's not allowed under insurance law. Once again, we're regulated by the California Department of Insurance. So, record, I want to throw this in there one more. I don't mean to interrupt, but just for the record, I believe Prop 25, the no votes in Senator Hertzberg's district, I think we won by about 8 points in Senator Hertzberg's own district.
Yeah, that's very telling.
I hope you're enjoying the podcast. Become a Patreon, support the podcast. Link is below in the description. Thank you.
And I was a English major, and I am very keen to the way that we use words, and like you said, the way that it could shape a narrative. So when you say somebody's being held in custody and their ransom is in reference to bail, it's like, wait a minute. Nobody kidnapped anybody, put them in custody, and is trying to extort like a rich family and say, hey, give us this money and then we'll give you your daughter back or something like that. That's such graphic and gross misuse of the word like a fee or bail bond premium to call it a ransom. And I did want to just go ahead and call out like just progressive people in general, or more so the radical left. There's a lot of really smart people, and they tend to pay like very keen attention to the words that we use when somebody's in transition, and we all have to be very sensitive to that. If you have a pronoun that you prefer to be addressed by, I'm absolutely fine with, complying with that. Yet, if we then say, it's offensive for somebody to call us bounty hunters when we're really just, fugitive recovery. And, what we do is we collect an insurance premium. We're governed by the Department of Insurance. And then you say, oh, we extort people with a ransom. I don't really understand how one set of rules applies to one group and then a completely different set of rules apply to the other group. I think we should just be intellectually honest with each other and call it what it is. Hey, it's a bail fee. It's not a ransom. It's not usury. We're governed by many different agencies, Department of Insurance. In my state, if I have a forfeiture, the first notice I get is from the judiciary. Then I get another notice from the prosecutor's office. And then if I don't respond, they forward it to the Attorney General's office. And then if the Attorney General puts legal action against me because, I failed to comply with a contract, then all of a sudden the Department of Insurance not only can suspend my license indefinitely, they could fine me, and whatever the bail amount is, they could try to get treble damages, which means if the bail amount was $10,000 and somebody didn't go to court, not only if I didn't pay the 10 to the court, would I have to pay the 10, I could pay 3 times that as a penalty. So we got so many different agencies on our back, especially in the state of Hawaii. I just don't see the logic in calling what we do loan sharking, ransom, usury. Like, it just doesn't even apply to me. I just don't see how that happens.
Yeah, but it once again, it feeds their narrative to say that, we need to get rid of these guys because of what they do. It's like saying I went to Starbucks and, they held my coffee ransom until I paid them. I mean, well, yeah, but that's really not how you should describe it. But I mean, there's a ton of hypocrisy. I mean, it just, listen, their arguments, the jails are too full, right? And if the jails are too full, that it's there, people are there because they're poor. They can't afford to bail out. Are there some people there that are poor? Absolutely. Okay. Are these people squeaky clean records, first time offending? Absolutely not. Okay. But to sit there and to say that the solution to too many people in jail is we're just going to get rid of this one mechanism, in which has basically been proven over decades and decades and decades of being the most effective and efficient way to get people out. Because all the stories you hear about people stuck in jail, you're not hearing about the hundreds of thousands of people we bail out every year that do get out, about the few that are left in. So you're going to get rid of this one mechanism that is the main outflow of the jail population, and you're going to replace it with something else that isn't going to be as efficient, that isn't going to be incentivized. It's like, what do you think's going to happen? It's just going to get backed up even further. I mean, what? This is a little off topic, but I just read an article, and it was in Cal Matters, and it was about bail reform and all the stuff's going on because there's some new bills this year. Hertzberg is at it again. He's got a new bill out there to try to get rid of us, and this time he's going to go with zero bail. But the whole article started out as a traditional hit piece on bail, right? These guys lock people in a cement box. They throw away the key. They're innocent until proven guilty. But then as the article progressed, it started pointing out all these other problems in the system. It started pointing out that a real problem in the system is that, A, not enough people are getting defense attorneys, and then not enough people are getting in front of a judge fast enough. And a lot of these cases, a lot of times the attorneys play these tricks with each other that extend cases longer than they need to be. So the people that are waiting long. So what ends up coming down to, it's the throughput of the actual court system, which has nothing to do with the pretrial part. It's the process of the courts that is mucking everything up. They don't have the resources. They don't have the money. I don't know when the last time a court system in any state has gotten a budget increase of any kind. I mean, if you do any public perception polls, and I've seen several on people's perceptions of courts, it's never positive. People don't like going to court. People don't even like going to jury duty when it's not even them on the other side of the thing. So courts have a bad image, and everyone's perception is that courts have too much money. And so what happens is politicians just go ahead, and it's a self-fulfilling prophecy of never funding courts in the right way. So now you have courts that aren't able to get their populations, increasing populations, because how many decades have our populations in California increasing populations through the system in an efficient manner. Meanwhile, all these people sit in jail, and then suddenly it's like, well, what do we do? Well, we gotta let the people out of jail. Well, that's not very safe. And what we're seeing is the results of that. Crime is going up everywhere. Why? Because you're letting all these people who they just say are in it, they're letting them out of jail without putting them through the process in the right way. So to me, that article just, you can look it up. It's Cal Matters. It was just last week. It screams that the problem's in the throughput. It's not in the front room, and don't even get me going on even like before you get into the system. Like, why aren't we trying, if there's too many people in the system, let's put some effort on trying to get people not to get into the system in the first place. Let's go talk to kids, get communities involved. It's to get them out of getting into the whole prison system in the first place. So to me, not enough of that stuff happens. And they're focusing on letting people out instead of solving what gets them in the first place. And then forgetting about the real problems, which is the throughput of the actual system.
Yeah, that's a very valid point. And I think when they compare the United States to other countries, I've traveled a lot and I've always made it a goal to go to a new country every year. And so many countries I've been to and the people that I've met have told me how the legal system works in other countries. I've personally been in Mexico and seen people just pay their way out of whatever. I've seen it done in Vietnam with a traffic offense. I've seen it done in Thailand with wearing a helmet when on a scooter. I have friends from different countries in Europe, and they talk about how it's really messed up. In the Philippines and in certain countries in Europe, you could be drinking and driving, and so long as you belong to a certain family or if you have money, you kind of get a pass. And I've never really felt that, it's an apples to the apples comparison when they say, oh, in America, we got so many people in custody versus the rest of the world. It's like, well, here in America, you're accountable for what you do. And it's hard to pay off an officer and then make it go away. You can't just pay off a judge. You can't just pay off an officer. It doesn't work that way. But instead of griping about things, because I didn't want to seem like I'm going to be the type who gripes about things, I would like to talk about solutions and calling out different agencies that I think could do a better job about posing solutions. Your great state, and this is, a podcast on California, your great state, Santa Clara County specifically, was the birthplace of pretrial services, which is an agency charged with helping the indigent client who is likely to return to court, who couldn't make bail because they didn't have any money. The whole point was you can't have debtor's prison where people are solely in custody because they can't afford to pay the bail to get out. That was the birth of pretrial services, so that those who were likely to return to court and did not pose a significant danger to public safety could get out. Now, that's been going on since 1969. In your state, I believe your state has the most robustly funded pretrial services agency in the country. What's so sacred about pretrial services where in one breath we say people can't get out because they don't have money, and yet we don't criticize the government agency charged to help people who don't have money? How does that work?
Yeah, so listen, if you and I were to work together and I said, okay, there's a door on the right side of the room and a door on the left side of the room, okay? And I'm going to open the door for people on the right side of the room, and I want you to open up the door to the people on the left side of the room. So I go about my business and I'm opening the door for people all day. And you decide, you know what? I'm not going to open the door for anybody. Okay? That's, without me saying it, that's what I'm saying. And I'm saying is, listen, California, are there people stuck in jail? Yeah, I mean, we've all said that. Okay, do a lot of people, and I would say the majority of people bail out of jail? Absolutely. Okay, but there's still those with special circumstances, right? People that can't help themselves, people that don't have other people around them, people that need assistance. And that's what pretrial services is designed for. And I don't know, I'll tell you, I don't know a single bail agent in California that would ever say, eliminate pretrial services 100% across the board. We don't need it, because there's a customer for them. There's someone that they're supposed to be helping. And it's interesting when it'd be like you telling me, I've been opening the door for people all day. You haven't been. You telling me, why don't we have more people in the room? Eric, what are you doing? Meanwhile, you haven't opened your door. So these people have been in existence for all these years. And then you have people saying, well, we have people who are stuck in jail who can't afford it. And my question always is, well, then why hasn't pretrial services let them out? Why haven't pretrial services helped them? Because I can tell you, there's a pretrial services guy in the county next to me that's in there trying to bail out a guy on a $50,000 bond who does have money. His family's in my office right now. But why is the pretrial services guy calling the family on their cell phone, telling them not to bail him out because he's going to get him out? Meanwhile, you got poor people languishing away in jail that really can't get out. So explain to me why he's on with the people that can, and he's not helping the guy that can. I mean, I know the answer to this. I'm just being rhetorical right now, but I'm telling you right now, they want our customer because our customer shows up for court. Okay? The indigent guy that they're going to let out, and they're going to tell him to show up at court on a certain date, they're never going to see that guy again. They're never going to get that guy to show up. And that's the problem. And they know that. That's why they stopped bailing those people out. So to me, pretrial services, its mission and what it's supposed to do, I'm 100% for it. Help the people that can't help themselves. But when someone has the ability to bail out and their family's willing to co-sign and to be involved in that process to ensure that person shows up for court, because I'll tell you, with or without the money, I still want the family involved because that family is one of the most powerful things we have in our business. They're the most powerful thing that not only gets that person on the other side to not go out and behave badly while they're waiting to go to court, but also get them to go to court. And then if they weren't showing up, they're going to help us find them because they got something on the line. And that's what that component of this that everybody misses out on is that there's a role for both of us. We serve a purpose, okay? And pretrial services is the same way. And it's just like these bail funds that have come out. With this whole summer, with all the rioting and all that stuff, these bail funds, Minnesota Freedom Fund and all these stuffs came about. I have no problem. Our industry has no problem with these bail funds existing. But exist in the world of what you are supposed to do and what your missions are, which is to help these people that can't help themselves. I don't need a bail fund bailing out a guy who just took 3 shots at a cop that has other gun charges on his record, paying his $500,000 bond with donations they got from people to bail out protesters. That's not a proper use of these other resources that are focused on these specific audiences that people are pointing the finger at us at saying, why are they there? And the reality is that person's not really our customer, you know? And if a guy's sitting in jail, and people always forget this also, the system has the mechanisms in place to handle this already. Okay? If someone's in jail and the bail's too high, within 48 hours, you're supposed to have a hearing. And you get in front of a judge and say, I can't afford that bond. Your lawyer says he can't afford that bond. And the judge will make a determination whether he's going to lower that bond for you. That already exists. And if the judge isn't going to lower the bond, then there's a reason that he's not doing that, right? We don't know what it is, but he has all the files. He knows the background. He knows the criminal history. So there's a process already in place that handles those that can't help themselves. And this
5-second break. I hope you're enjoying the video. If you are, comment below, like the video, subscribe if you care to. It really helps us with the algorithms and it helps support the podcast. Thank you.
Humphrey's case, and I know you wanted to talk about the Humphrey's case as well. That's what the Supreme Court just ruled. That was a story about the guy that robbed somebody. He took $5 in a bottle of cologne, and he had a $350,000 bond. Once again, that's the narrative being told by the other side. But the reality is he only took $5 in a bottle of cologne from the guy because that's all the guy had. If the guy had $1 million sitting on his nightstand, he would have taken the $1 million. What they also don't tell you is he was threatened to smother the guy and kill him with a pillow. And this was an elderly gentleman. So it wasn't like, and they also don't tell you it was his fourth strike. So this wasn't a guy that had a clean record. This wasn't a guy, he was in jail. Did he deserve a $600,000 bond? No. But he went back to court, 48 hours, the court lowered his bond. Now, then he sat in court for a really long time because there's no way he was going to afford that bond either. So that ruling that just came out on the Supreme Court regarding that Humphrey's case basically was just saying that the appeals court got it right, is that judges need to take into consideration the amount of money that somebody can pay. And in a way, they kind of already do that, though, right? I mean, Nicholas Lindblad You get a $10,000 bond. Michael Jackson gets a $5 million bond. Why? Because $10,000 bond, it's not going to hurt Michael Jackson if he doesn't show up. So they take that into consideration already. So it was just kind of solidifying, I think, what's already on the books is that judges need to take the amount of money someone has into consideration, as well as other things, their flight risk, the risk to the public, and all those different things. So it just really says what's already on the books and what they already do today.
Yeah, and what people generally don't want to give, or maybe they just don't care to ever ask and find out, but when bails are set to an excessive amount, that doesn't help anybody. All it does is incarcerate somebody. So you have somebody and they got like some huge bail amount. How can they qualify for a bail bond? It's not just about submitting premium, which they probably don't have either, but how are you gonna like get the authority? You work for a surety company. How am I gonna be able to write on AIA paper a $250,000 bail bond unless I have co-signers who are perhaps homeowners, or maybe they have like a fair credit rating, or maybe they have, you know, some sort of credentials that say, hey, they've been in this certain area, born and raised, you know, they're not going to just take off because they're, you know, non-residents or something like that. There's so many different factors that go into having just a $250,000 bail actually get written. It's not even just about the money, but a lot of people don't look into that. They see excessive bails, and we too, as bail bondsmen, see excessive bails, and then we just sit thinking, well, what could anybody do? They can't afford to put up the full amount of the cash. They can't qualify and pay for a bail agent. The bail is set too high for this specific person. It circles back to what I think you're saying is it needs to be set, and the key word is to a sufficient amount. Yep. So Michael Jackson has one amount, Nicholas Lindblad has another amount. The person with the terrible failure to appear history might have a different amount because their history says that they're unlikely to return to court. It does have so much to do with what a sufficient amount is. And bail bondsmen have been in it, like, we all agree on this for so long, yet I wonder why people want to point the finger at us when technically there still is pretrial services, there still is petitioning the court for reduction, and yet the lion's share of the blame is on the bail bondsman.
We're the easy target. I mean, it just is, and it's unfortunate because, listen, I've been doing this for probably 16 to 18 years now. I've been in this business and I've seen it, and I didn't know much about it, but the more I learned and the more people that I met that were in it, you begin to realize that really essential role that we play. And yet other countries don't have surety bail, only the Philippines, and we don't. But so why how is that an argument point for why bail's bad? You know what they do in some countries when you steal? They cut your hands off. We don't do that in this country. So you know what? Some of the things we do in this country aren't that bad. Mm-hmm. So I think to sit there and criticize us for a system that I think works pretty good. Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of people in this country in jail. That's a whole nother conversation. But I think that, you know, the surety bail system is a pretty safe, and it's a pretty successful means in which to ensure someone's appearance in court.
And it's certainly not the only means for somebody to get out. It's not,
you know, but
it's just one.
Do you want to pay money? What if I gave you the choice of having to pay a 10% premium on a bond amount, or strap an ankle monitor onto your leg that you have to wear for the next 6 months? Which one do you think takes away more liberty from you? Okay. I mean, you're innocent until proven guilty, right? Well, a lot of these, you know, these bail reform measures say, oh yeah, you know, we're really trying to help these innocent until proven guilty people. But you know what? In order to get out, you're going to have to go ahead and strap this monitor on, and you're going to have to go to alcohol training and classes and anger management courses. But you're like, I haven't been convicted of anything yet. So why am I having to do these things when I have? So I think it's an interesting, once again, it's the hypocrisy of the argument against us is to say that what we do is liberty restricting, yet slapping an ankle monitor or forcing someone to comply with these these things that you set up for them, conditions as part of their release, that's not liberty restricting. And then, that sufficient sureties. I mean, I believe the majority of the state constitutions in this country, you have the sufficient sureties language in them. I mean, I think it's over 30 of them. So there's, and along with that, they don't have preventative detention, which is, once again, if you're not going to let somebody out, then it's not letting them. It's either let them out or don't let them out. And so you got to do that in a safe and fair way. But a lot of states don't have that preventative detention measure unless it's a capital crime of some kind. So we need to be there. We need to be that option to help with those riskier cases, which we are really good at handling.
So you're in California, which is, I would say, universally regarded as sort of like the leader, especially of movements that are quote unquote progressive. So what your state does has a tremendous effect on the rest of the United States, because you guys sort of are that leader. So you guys just had a system proposed where cash conditions were not going to be accepted, and then you reverted back to the traditional system. If you are in a jurisdiction that is considering those types of measures, could you point out the pros and cons of having a system where it seems as though the court has sort of like an overwhelming power to either decide detain or release? There's nothing in the middle. Could you speak to what some of the options would be for those states and point out some of the things that might happen when you really only have one choice, which is detain or release? You have those, it's a binary, it's 1-0, it's detain or release.
Yeah, no, I mean, I think you get what has happened in a lot of these other states that have tried this. I mean, that's exactly what's going to happen in Illinois. So the federal system is that option, right? So in the federal system, they got rid of surety bail, cash bail a long time ago, several years, decades ago. And so what they did was, it was after I think it was the Bail Reform Act in 1984 or something like that. And the detention rate at that point in the federal system was like 20-something%. So that means 20% of the people were detained without bail. Everyone else was just released for free, right? Released for free, no money. Okay, fast forward to today. You know how many people are detained in the federal system? Over 70%.
Wow.
That's what happens, right? I let you out for free, you violate, boom. Now you're in and you're not getting out. Because I trusted you. Shame on you. Shame on you for fooling me once, shame on me for fooling me twice, right? So you're now detained. So that's eventually what happens to these bail reform cities, right? So in California, Senator Hertzberg's new bill is a zero bail bill, which is basically what they did during COVID, saying everyone, we're just going to let them out. We're going to let them out for free. Now, this would permanently do zero bail. I think there'd be a very, very, very short list of crimes left that would still have bail, but it would never be enough to support an industry. So, I mean, it just, in essence, it would eliminate the commercial bail industry. But it's like, okay, well, we've seen this movie. It's like, it's going to watch Jaws and then saying, well, we can go in the water now because they got the shark. It's like we know there's a shark in the water. Why would we go? But they're going to California, and they want to go down this path. They want to see what happened in New York. And in 4 months, they turned it around really fast by letting everybody out. It just doesn't work. I mean, sorry to say, but there's bad people in the world. There's people in the world that don't want to follow the law. There's people in the world that break the law that may or may not want to hurt people, that end up hurting people, that there's a system and laws in place to protect us. And so we need to be able to have a system that has the ability to, like I said before, be like what we are, be that fulcrum, be that balance point of the individual liberty that we all have, that I'm not going to be detained by my government. And at the same time, if I'm a victim, to know that the guy that committed that crime against me is going to have a day in court and I'm going to get a chance at justice. And I think when you let all these people out, you destroy that entire promise of our criminal justice system. You no longer are able to promise victims they're going to get that chance, because that guy probably is not going to show up. In Harris County, Texas, ORing everybody led to a 60% failure to appear rate.
Wow.
Okay. And when people don't show up, not only does the victim not get his day at crime, but the amount of money it costs. Think about it. You're supposed to have a trial. The lawyers are there. The judge is there. Everyone's there. And the guy didn't show up. So they've wasted all that money. Okay. And they did a calculation in Texas. And I think the cost of that was like, I don't know, $1,700 per failure to appear. And I think over the year that they did the study, it was like $11 million had been wasted in defendants not showing up based on being released through pretrial services and OR bonds. So, there's an implication for having a system that is either or. To be perfectly honest, I don't know how many states. Like I said, I think there's 39 states that have preventative detention in their state constitutions, that I don't think the state can actually do that. They can't just say, we're going to detain you unless it's a specific charge, a violent charge. So any law that says that we're just going to let everybody out, they're going to have to probably make some changes to their constitution to be able to do that. But it just never ends well.
Okay, so we're coming to the end of the podcast. I wanted to go to the future of what's happening in California. And to me, it just seems like the California bail agent has a target on his or her back. I remember from the bail bond convention, Senator Hertzberg proposed a new legislation, which basically, and I'm paraphrasing, and you'll be able to fill in the gaps here. Basically, if somebody were to bail out and then to pay their bail bond fee within, I think it was 30 or 60 days, if the charges were dropped or something, 95% of the fee would have to be given back. Of course, I don't know my details. Could you fill in what the latest, I guess, attack on the bail bond industry is from Senator Hertzberg?
Yeah, I mean, I don't even know he can legally do that. I mean, it's the insurance department's responsibility to. I don't think he can regulate us being having to return premium. I mean, it's like, it's a strange issue. It's a strange approach to trying to get at us. But he's tried it in previous years, something similar like this. But it's a pretty complicated thing, way over my head in terms of the insurance law that is involved with that, or even just the regulatory side of it. But that's the approach they're trying to take. Is that, okay, we're going to put you out of business by replacing you with union workers. Well, that didn't work. We're going to put you out of business by just making all bail zero. We're going to hope that that's not going to work. And so the next thing was we're just going to put you out of business by making you have to return all your premium. So at some point, you can hit the piñata so many times, you got to stop and maybe go on to something else. Meanwhile, you look around California, you look around Los Angeles, and you got homeless people everywhere. You got mental health issues all over the city that no one wants to address. And I'd love to see people like Senator Hertzberg use their leadership ability to go help these people who are on the streets. Find a solution to get these people's lives back together. Find a solution so that you don't have these people slowly evolving into criminals, because they're starting to get to a point now where they're hurting people. People walking by and they're being attacked now. I mean, so there's things that are going on in the state that would be so much better for them to focus their time on. And someone like Senator Hertzberg, who has a very powerful leadership position, could really make a difference in California. I mean, and it shocks me sometimes to think why he's so hell-bent on getting rid of us. I really don't understand it. I mean, if he really took the time to go to a jail and to see how the process works, I mean, even just go down to LA County Jail, you can see who's in that jail. You can see that it's not people that are poor and languishing away. It just really doesn't exist anymore. I mean, one of the things we didn't talk about that we should have probably started off before I even got into SB 10 was that, California's criminal justice policy have put its jails into the position they are nowadays. It started with AB 109 that was passed. Remember AB 109? It was the realignment, right? It took all those crimes that were felonies and made them misdemeanors so that you can now not put those people in jail. You can let them out on misdemeanors. But it took people that were in the state prisons and put them back into jails, local jails, because they had to reduce the prison populations. And so you now had people who were serving, in jails, you'll serve a year term or less, right? Or you're just there pre-trial. But now you have people on 10-year, 20-year sentences for murder that are like in a jail because there's no room at the prison level. So the jails are filled with convicted prisoners. I mean, I think the LA County Jail before AB 109 was, I think they were somewhere in the worlds of probably, 70% of the people were there pre-trial, okay, which is about right. And then 30% were there serving sentences, okay? Right now, the LA County Jail, last time I looked, is like 40% of the people in the LA County Jail are there pre-trial. So that means 60% of that jail is filled by people not there pre-trial, either serving a sentence or some other hold or whatever. I mean, it's unbelievable to think that the jails have changed that much. So when they say our jails are full, but they're full of people you can't let out. Wow. You can't let these guys out. And so to sit there and once again, it's that false narrative of poor people languishing away in jail. There really aren't. They don't arrest anybody for anything anymore. You have to do something pretty bad. 90% of the people that are in the pretrial population in the LA County Jail, the largest jail in the country, 90% of the pretrial people are there on a felony charge, not a misdemeanor charge. I mean, you don't hear these numbers. And the thing is, all Senator Hertzberg has to do is go to that jail, look at those numbers. Then he can see, what, this is the problem I need to solve, not this one. But they just don't do that. It makes no sense to me.
Yeah, I think in the private sector, in order just to make ends meet and to have a successful business, you have to solve a problem. You have to think about your client first. It has to be like client-centric. And that's not my great idea. That's Jeff Bezos, the best entrepreneur of all time. You have to think about what's best for your client. And sometimes, I know it sounds crazy, but sometimes just to incentivize somebody to actually go do that program, or just to incentivize somebody to stay in contact with their attorney, or to follow up with housing, and to make sure that they get into a shelter and get up that ladder so that they're no longer on the streets. Just to incentivize that, you sort of have to have the penalty of, hey, if you don't do this, we're going to revoke your bail. You know what I mean? There has to be like incentives, and then there have to be penalties. Without that very basic incentive and penalty structure, you sort of let the wayward client sort of slowly deteriorate due to their own vices, due to their own mental health issues, due to their own substance abuse issues. Yeah. You're really not doing a service to the client in certain cases when you just have the solution of, oh, wait, let them go. Well, yeah, for a lot of people, it's good to be out of custody. But for a lot of people, they need to have that sort of wake-up call, that come to Jesus moment, where your options are simple. You have to go ahead and complete this program and try to get back on track with your life, or you gotta sit in jail. You know what I mean? That's lost when people just want people out of custody. But hey, you guys are California. Everybody's leaving your state. Your tax base is evaporating as we speak. Your property values are lowering as we speak.
They're actually going up still.
Yeah, I'm a young person, and if I were to start a business, knowing the safety of me and my family, I would not want to start it in certain areas in the Bay Area as well as in SoCal, because I know that how am I supposed to run my business? How am I supposed to start my new restaurant where the crazy criminal guy is gonna, rob my server or whatever, and it's gonna start a downward spiral, and people are just gonna leave to like states like, anywhere else.
I know there's a pendulum, and it'll swing back. And it's going to swing back, I think, hard on this state, unfortunately. I'm born and raised in California. I love it here. But it's becoming not a fun place to be anymore. I mean, it's crazy. And I understand, what drives the politics and what they're doing. But, when they propose a wealth tax, and the representative that proposes it they say, well, don't you think all the people that basically pay the taxes in this, are they going to leave now? And his comment is, well, they haven't left yet.
Oh, wow.
And you're just like, okay, that I don't even want to tell you who that was because I'll probably get in trouble. But anyway.
But no, we're gonna root for California. I went to school there. I had a great 5 years there. Worked there. Went to school there. Love California, SoCal. I hope the best for your safety and your tax base. That'd be great, and your property values. But yet to be determined how that shakes out over the next few years. Thank you very much for joining on the podcast. If people wanted to, follow up on all things Eric Granof, do you have, company, link, Twitter, social media? How can people learn more about what you do and what your company does?
Yeah, just, I'm Eric Granof on LinkedIn, Twitter, Facebook, all that stuff. Feel free, you can put up, my information if you want. I'm fine with that. And company's AIA Surety. It's a great company. Do a lot of great things for agents. Very innovative company. Love working there. Listen, bail's a passion, and I think anyone that's worked in this business falls in love with the excitement and the passion of it. And the people. I think the people are really what makes this business what it is. And I get lucky enough, I get to travel all over the country and I get to visit with agents. I haven't even know Hawaii yet. I haven't been invited to Hawaii yet.
Come on down.
Hoping that'll change soon. So, but no, listen, I'm more than happy to talk to anybody. I love talking about this stuff if you can't tell. And just reach out.
Cool. Thank you very much. Be well, folks.